Hi, my name is Sakile Mthembu, King Sakile Prosecutor Mthembu, to be more precise. And I come here to you with the third video as the owner and founder of the private government R for Umbrella. This third video is concentrated, it's more or less concentrated on the on the elaborate findings as compared to the first video. And if you remember very well, the first video was about the Taliban and their violation of human rights on the Afghanistan general population and the excessive violation of human rights on their women, forcing them to conform to the Islam religion that is militant through the Taliban, and forcing them to make sure that they wear their garments, which are the hijabs, burqas, and niqabs. All right. Now, moving on, and I just want to emphasize that today's video is actually a speech, and this speech is a speech that is concentrated actually on the current conflict around the world that each and every single country in the world is currently being affected by this problem, whether directly or indirectly. So, as you know, currently, there is the largest conflict that's taking place around the world in the planet right now is the war that Russia is imposing on Ukraine, which started this year in February. Right. Russia did tell us South Africans to keep far away from Russian politics and not have anything to comment on it. So I'm not going to say anything about it, considering the fact that as a world leader, it is very important for me to respect world leaders' stances as much as I expect them to respect mine. Right. Now, moving on. So today's topic of the speech, as a king and as acting prime minister of my own government until I finally establish my own parliament, the name of this topic today is the Islam religion and its caliphate entourage. Okay. I think this year and last year, my organization, my government is probably the first to actually dedicate themselves and take on the propaganda that the caliphate has been, that Islam has been lobbying within our democracies and within our religion and Christianity as well. All right, so moving on without beating up the bush. Right, I'm going to start it off right here. What is Islam? Islam is a non-Christian belief, which is Muslim, and Islam is a belief that the All High and Almighty Prophet Muhammad is the messenger of Allah. And the belief is that each and every single thing you do in the name of Muhammad to please Allah. All right. The emotions that go along with Islam, back before in the 1990s and long ago, love was one of the emotions that was that was the driving force behind Muslims. But as you can see around the world currently right now, that picture is very much distorted. Okay, so that is Islam. Islam is a religion that where they worship and they praise Muhammad as the messenger of the message of Allah. Allah in this context being the how can I say it? The Jehovah. Our in Christianity, the name of our God is Jehovah, and the name of the God of the Islam religion is Allah. And unfortunately, it is not the same person. Okay, so moving on. What region is... So I just compiled a couple of questions myself in order to try and convey the understanding and the message a little better without using or without diving too strictly on Muslim terms and quotations and citations and so forth. All right. So what region is the religion of Islam? What region is the Muslim Islam worshipped in? It's practiced across the whole world, just like any other religion, just like Christianity, just like Hinduism, just like Buddhism, etc. Right. So, but the when we emphasize as to say what region, I'm mainly talking about the followers of this religion, which countries or which side of the world do they actually come from? And the side of the world is East, right? And the Middle East, to be more precise, because the Middle East comprises of this country: Pakistan, India, Afghanistan, Kazakhstan, Iraq, Iran, Syria, Israel, Bangladesh, the Bahamas, etc. Right. So Saudi Arabia. So we already start to see the countries that practice this Muslim religion, and the race, most of the race of the people that practice this religion are of Indian origins. So by Indian origins, I'm not going to be a fancy. I'm not Indian, but the clans and the tribes that I know, you have the Tamils, you have the Pashtus. I think you already know you have the Palestinians. You as well. So you have the Jewish as well. So generally, you can already see that the race and the ethnicity of the followers of this religion are concentrated from the area of the Middle East. Okay, right. Who joins Islam? Okay, the person who joins Islam is most probably initially if you are from a family that is Islam, you are born Islam, because you are indoctrinated from a very young age before you even have the chance to actually question it, which is very much just like every other religion. Every other religion, the child is raised on the altar of their parents, and then when the child is old enough and smart enough to finally start questioning the way they were raised up, the child can then adopt a religion in which suits their own belief. Right, so who joins Islam? Anyone who does not, besides the people who have been raised by Muslim families. If you come from a religion, whether Christianity, paganism, Hinduism, well, I'm not going to put Hinduism there, or traditional African culture, whether you're Zulu or any other Zulu, Tswana, or Sutu, any other religion, if you feel that Jesus Christ and Christianity is not the belief that is not the religion that you feel suits your belief, then Islam is always, Islam always has an open door and a welcoming hand that shakes you and allows you in. Just make sure that you take your shoes off first. Right. So any person who feels that they no longer believe in their own religion is more than welcome to join Islam. Okay. Now, when we move on, now let me move on now. So the next point is, what are the dynamics of the indoctrination and the doctrine of the religion that we call Islam? Right, cool. First and foremost, the doctrine here is that, as I mentioned in the first video, the dialects of this religion are not dialects that are familiar with the symbolism of Western culture, Western democracy, and Christianity itself, and the English language too. So, which means that when you decide to join in Islam, you need to understand, or the people who have joined Islam have had to abandon their total belief or their total knowledge of everything that they have learned that had Western and democratic influence. So that means theoretically speaking, that means if you join Islam, the alphabet, the 26-lettered alphabet, of which is your ABC, you need to forget it exists, because they don't use the 26-letter alphabet in the Islam religion. So you need to forget. You need to understand that it's not gonna serve any use to you, besides when you are actually attaining information that the Islam likes to call Western propaganda. All right, cool. Moving on. The world has a diversified collection of culture. One of them is Islam. Right. Yes, the world does have a diversified collection of cultures. And these cultures conform to constitutional rules, which we call the Constitution. Right. So look at it in this sense. If I am Zulu and I'm not Christian, if I commit a crime, if I kill a girl, or if I kill a person, if I kill a baby, the police, someone has the right to open a case against me, and the police can come and arrest me, and I will be judged and sentenced accordingly. Right. In Taliban, if a member of the Taliban were to do this, the constitutional government of the Afghanistan, not of the Taliban, cannot arrest the member of the Taliban, because first and foremost, the constitution that allows law enforcers and judges and the legislature to arrest people the constitution is based on swearing under oath. And swearing under oath means you place your hand on the Bible and not the Quran. I don't think there has ever been a court case ever where the Quran is brought out instead of the Good News Bible. All right. Okay. So the world has a diversified collection of culture, and one of them is Islam. And the reason why Islam exists within this democracy is because democracy entails that Islamists have the right to practice their own religion. But Islamists say that no one else has the right to practice their own religion. All right, cool. So now let us move on. Unification of cultures through democracy by allowing the constitutional adoption of either democracy or communism, or both simultaneously. So, as I stated, right, the cultures, the practice of different cultures and of different religions The platform is afforded by the Constitution of Democracy, right? And that Constitution of Democracy allows even for communism to be practiced, because communism is not communism without the presence of democracy. And depending on which style of governance a certain country chooses to adopt, they can the government can actually the government and the government can actually test to see if whether their communities and their societies are ready to move from communism into democracy. All right. However, the Islam religion does dispute and kick out both constitutions that conform to the legislative law. Right, and the Islam religion does kick out democracy, and the Islam religion does kick out communism, because there is nothing communal about warfare. Right, let's move on. The relevancy of both democracy or communism is only objective in relation to the um, to the developing political factors of factions of whether that area needs communism or is more or less likely ready for democracy, and as I just explained, right? So as much as the world has been looking at tyrannical leaders who employ communism as their style of governance, as their style of governance, right? But the relevancy that both democracies and communists meet together is where consumers are concerned. And consumers are the general population. And if consumers, which are the general population, look at communism as a failing governance style because of democracy not being able to totally eradicate poverty, right? Totally as being not being as democracy not being able to totally eradicate poverty. At some point, eventually, communism starts looking like a solution to eradicate this poverty. Okay. So the relevancy between now democracy and communism is obviously the consumers as well. So, and if the consumers are on the the short end, receiving end of both government styles, because especially on the because of government styles, because of corruption, that is where you find that the door of the Islam is always open. And the door of Islam tells you that when you come in, you're not doing it for the Chinese president who employs a communistic style of governance, nor are you doing it for the American president who employs a democratic style of governance, but you are doing it for Allah. Right. This readiness is determined by the status quo the general consumers choose to conform to. Right, as I said, the regions around the world are different. They are not the same. And that is because the pace of development in different countries around the world is not the same. In countries where the development is very slow, there's a lot of mass poverty. Communism and socialism seems to be a more affordable or a more psychologically correct method to employ in terms of delivering basic services to those people. But however, it does not mean that a democratic country or democratic president cannot employ communistic solutions for a specific region that needs mass emancipation. All right. And it also does not mean that communistic presidents cannot employ democratic solutions in order to combat issues of sustainable development in regions where they are ready to move on to maybe say the fourth industrial revolution, or move on to the economical revolution and so forth. But I mean, if we look at it as COVID-19, and we look at the planet had been resetted, or let's just look at lockdown having been a reset on the planet and stuff, different presidents across the countries, across the world, can actually look at the state of their countries and say if whether should I be employing democracy, or should I be employing communism, or should I be employing both, right? So with that being said, when each leader employs both, he needs to take into account that the presence of Islam followers is there within the consumers of democracy and as well communism. Okay, right. Let us move on. So what the population chooses to conform to is what puts food on the table the quickest, right? And if Islam is promising to put food faster on the table as compared to the Chinese communistic or Russian communism, or the American and Canadian democracies, right? Then Islam is a better option for these consumers, and these consumers will conform to the Muslim laws that the Taliban enforce. All right, let's move on. This conformity tells us where the country is in different levels of Maslow's hierarchy of needs and wants. So the lower levels of Maslow's hierarchy needs and wants dictates that communism be used in order to meet those needs, and then the upper level of Maslow's hierarchy needs and wants dictates that democracy should be implemented in terms of what the consumers want and need. All right. The prevalent total power communistic leaders impose onto their citizens and consumers assumes an anti-democratic stance, as tyranny is constitutionally against both the democratic and communistic constitution. Right. Okay, so this just simply means that in places where democracy has failed to place food on the table, guaranteed for 7 days, it will lose favoritism to communism. But however, because of the failing of delivering food on the table by democratic leaders, it means that the corruption that is no different from the leaders who implement communism is not different from the leaders who implement communism, which what they would have in this instance, failing to deliver food on the table, is corruption. But the arrogance and the ego behind the president, behind the presidents who employ communism, stems from the fact that The also high mighty presidents and leaders in the democracies have failed to bring food to the table. But meanwhile, as much as tyrannical communism leaders have been pointed out as corrupt criminals, and as warlords whatsoever, to people who are really desperate, who are not looking at their style of clothing, but looking at just having clothing. Communism communism is employed by these consumers. But when you find people who feel that they do not really want to conform to the constitution of communistic countries and precedents and so forth, that is where you find entrepreneurs and businessmen who do not want to conform to any form of rules because they have money and the ways in which they attained that money. All right, those leaders, those businessmen are businessmen who are most likely going to backstab the rule and the constitution of communism. And once communism loses favoritism within these syndicate leaders or syndicate businessmen and entrepreneurs, that is when the door of Islam opens wholeheartedly. All right, cool. Let's move on. This, by default, has criminalized communistic world leaders, consequentially making them enemies of the democratic nations. All right. As I've just explained. All right. So now let's move on. These leaders refuse. Now these leaders who are fighting to win back those who have entered the door of Islam, those leaders who are fighting to win back those who have gone inside the door of Islam, right? Are they coerce communistic tyrannical leaders to be against the participation or the enrollment or being members of forums and affiliations such as the United Nations. Okay, right. So when a country or when a leader refuses to conform or refuses to be part of a team like the United Nations, you find that the stances of these world leaders are corrupt. Right, they are corrupt. So these leaders refuse United Nation partnerships and always oppress and starve their people with war and tyranny through corruption. Okay, this corruption is very much syndicate in nature. And if it's syndicate in nature, this is where I start to differentiate the nature of money that funds certain countries and certain precedents. All right. So now, before I touch on there, I just want to scan through this right quickly. Okay. So the social influence within non-democratic nations is non-Western religions such as Islam. Okay. Within a mass of population, you do find members of the Islam religion within work environments that have members of the Christian kingdom as part of it, members of the Scientology kingdom as part of it, members of the Mormon kingdom, which is actually Christian inadvertently, but and then you also find people who are Africans. Gosh, there's more there's more than there's more than 500 different tribes in Africa altogether. More than 300 different tribes just in the DRC alone. Different tribes and different languages just in the DRC alone. All right. And in the DRC alone, you do find tons of members who have vowed pledge to being servants of the Islam religion. Okay. So the social influence, by social influence, I'm talking about social media, when peers and friends go out for drinks in pubs, bars, and restaurants and stuff. Within those friends, pubs, and bars, and so forth, you have members of the Islam religion. Okay, people live and eat from the church. The exchange of religious recognition has political power above the disadvantaged in terms of the influence. All right. So, like here in South Africa, for a very long time now, Christian churches have been responsible. Missions, actually, I mean, the foundation of South Africa and its politics as well and its democracies stems from the inception of missions that brought food to starving people and brought education as well to uncivilized and uneducated people. So by exchanging these religious culture, we start to see that there are people who are disadvantaged to such an extent, like I mentioned earlier on, that the democracies cannot help anymore. And even though the democracies are helping, the countries that have adopted, that are now republics, such as DRC, RSA, the Republic of South Africa, and other republics as well, you find that those republics who have adopted the democratic constitution, their governments are so corrupt. The mass population starts to think that democracy does not work at all because food is not being placed on the table. All right. So what happens is when you move out into other demographic areas like Central Africa and the Sub-Saharan, where these predominantly black governments have been playing and chasing around with corruption, that is where you find that the Islam religion is actually capitalizing at most its best. Places that are off grid, that is where they are capitalizing. All right. And with that capitalization, you start realizing that Islam is opting to go off grid. Why is Islam opting to go off grid? So they don't have to find themselves where they have to adopt constitutions, legislative constitutions of that are democratic, or constitutional legislations that are communistic. All right. So they are anti-democracy and they are anti-communistic as well, but they are just pro Islam. This is just part one of this video that I'm making right now, and just bear in mind that the Islam religion is anchoring itself in off-grid positions, in off-grid demographic areas. And these off-grid demographic areas are the perfect soil in which to plant the caliphate.